Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Ali McIntosh, the servant leader of the Bahamas Constitution Party. I wish to welcome you to this first edition of the Servant Leader Speaks today on this first day of July for the second half of 2019. I'm broadcasting live from my office near downtown Nassau, so of course there will be traffic passing, emergency vehicles passing here almost every hour. And so I thank you so much for joining me as we are going to get started in just a few seconds. I appreciate for those of you who are joining me today. As we get started, I wish to pronounce a blessing on this broadcast for effectiveness throughout the time that we will go through with these broadcasts. And so join me for a short word of prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable unto you, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. I've decided to begin these live broadcasts because I wish to rejoin the conversation to the nation to the extent to speak on matters of national importance, of those not only to myself, but the Bahamas Constitution Party and for the nation. Additionally, I wish to be able to deal with matters at length and to extent to which I can clearly articulate those salient points. While I appreciate the broadcast media and the various talk shows which I will continue to appear on and to talk to, this broadcast will be extended across social media platform and give audiences the opportunity to listen, to send in their questions and their answers or their comments. And I would like to thank those who are coming in, Dr. McCartney all the way from the United States. I do appreciate you coming on. First, I wish to extend congratulations to Her Excellency Dame Margurite Pindling. Oh, she is a lady worthy of praise, and I wish to express my gratitude to her for her service, a stellar service to the nation over the past 5 years. She has reminded us what standards and protocol in the nation should be as she demits office. I wish to wish her long life, good health for the future, and I wish to also thank the Pindling family for the loan of their parents, which they have shared with us for their entire life. I am always grateful for Lady Pindling. She is a woman of great wealth to the nation, and we thank you for her most recent service. In that regard, I also wish to congratulate the incoming Governor General, His Excellency Cornelius A. Smith. I pray that his tenure in office will be successful and gracious as his time in public life. We pray for his success and good health as he serves the nation. Now turning to some other salient points. You may wish to ask the question, why do you call yourself servant leader? This is an answer. This is a very easy answer for me. As you know, for more than a decade and a half, I've been involved with and study and research on constitutional matters, basically constitutional reform and matters relating to creating a new constitution for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, thus the rebirth of the nation. Of course, my work and my upcoming book, How to Reconstruct a Nation, has been a recipient of much information on transformational leadership, on servant leadership, and part of the concept of transformational leadership is to create the model that you wish to see and work on it. As servant leader, leadership is the concept I espouse to. I believe it was essential for me to take on the name to show where we need to go in the nation. It is that we are servants to the people and not their rulers, that we are serving them rather than being served of them. As we get started on the beginning of this new month, I will speak very often over the next few days leading into the 46th anniversary of our independence. This is important as matters of the nation need to be brought forward, and we need to put the Bahamas on a new path to essentially creating a new Bahamas. This call for a righteous agenda, for good, accountable, transparent government, for which I have called for and have continued to call for over the past 21 years. This is important as we see that successive governments have determined to breach and infringe on the Constitution, resulting in malfeasance while in public office. Successive governments have been the cause of the need for a renewed call for honest and integrous persons to come forward for national leadership and to become servant leaders. This is a matter which I will deal with even more in the coming weeks. Now let's move on to some very salient matters, and particularly the one of murder. As we've looked in the nation, in the present dilemma relating to resolving conflict, we must find another way in which to resolve our conflicts in a more humane way. When I look at the recent spat of murders, I guess that is a light word to say spat, but I am appalled by the alarming rate of murders in the country. I cannot recall all of the incidents because every day, twice and 3 times a day, there is incidents of 2 and 3 persons being killed or 14 people being hurt by gunfire. And so these are very disconcerting matters at this time. I wish to express, though, my sincerest condolences for persons who are experiencing loss, in particular the families of the young men who were killed in Italy, and for those killed right on our shores. I look, and for a person who worked for so many years in youth work, I am appalled to see such talent, such promise, having to go to the grave so quickly. But this is very sorrowful as we see what has happened even in Montel Heights just the other day. I mean, how do you spray bullet at a party? You know, this is becoming atrocious in the nation, and we must find a way not only to resolve our conflicts, but we need to find a way in which we put a handle on this relating to the governance of the nation. I know a lot of times people determine that crime, we say crime is political, and we try to use it as a football, but what it is that the decisions that policymakers make determine what happens in the nation. And if policymakers are not making decisions or policy that is causing crime to be abated, then it becomes a political football. So I understand the concept when people say that. And for persons who have been involved, not only in youth work, but in politics for the last 21 years, it is always a matter of public policy. And so we must, as legislators, those who are in the House of Assembly and the Senate, must push to make sure that legislation is put forward to really push the agenda of solving crime in the nation. I am also very saddened to see the abundance of the disregard for human life. I wish to call for calm. I wish to ask that cooler heads prevail, that those persons who are committing crime, those persons who are involved in crime, not just only at the street level, but there are persons involved in crime at higher level, persons who are involved in drug trafficking or gun running or anything that is causing the mayhem on our streets. I am asking that you reconsider the retaliation against persons for murder. I think the police force is able to bring certain calm and justice to the streets, but we are also seeking that justice is done quickly. Because if a matter goes to the court and it takes 4 to 5 years, then someone will believe that their matter has not been taken into consideration. So I wish to call for us to consider in our resolving of issues that we be calm and that our cooler heads prevail. While some of these matters of crimes, these crimes are crimes of passion, I think some are more calculated. Retaliation is always senseless. You know why? Because in most cases, people are hurt who had nothing to do or anything to do with the previous crime. And that's why retaliation is terrible. And so persons have to consider before they retaliate that these things should not be done. I have to, at this time, and I'm doing it again, join in the chorus of persons calling for the return of the death penalty for murder. If you commit the capital offense of murder, which means you have calculated and with malice taken the life of another person, you should be sentenced to death. That is what murder is. It's not that you've just caused the death of a person, but it was calculated, and it is with malice. A death sentence should be handed down. It is not only my personal opinion or preference in regards to that policy, but it is the policy of the Bahamas Constitution Party, not only to have the death sentence brought forward, but that there would be a swift and quick trial, and that all avenues must be exhausted quickly before the death sentence must be handed down. But however it is, the death sentence must be handed down. Additionally, I believe that the appellate court or the appeals court in the Bahamas must become the final court for crimes in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I'm looking at it like this. If we cannot trust ourselves to try a man or a woman and sentence them, then we should not be governing ourselves. How should we govern ourselves and we don't believe that the court, the appellate court, can try a person with jury trial and sentence them? Most times people who are not proponents of the death sentence, they believe that always people are going to make mistakes. But I believe a jury of our peers can make a qualified decision whether a person is guilty or not when it goes to the Supreme Court and then to the appeals court, that those ought to be adequate measures in which a person ought to be tried. I wish to call for legislation to seek to refuse leave for any criminal case to go to the Privy Council. What people don't understand sometimes is that in order for a case to go to the Privy Council, the appeal court must give leave for that case to go to the Privy Council. But if we put legislation in place so that we suffocate that leave or we deny that leave at the appellate court level, then the appellate court becomes the final authority. I believe that is necessary. We do not have to go to the Supreme Court, not the Supreme Court, but the Privy Council in regards to criminal cases. We commit them here in the Bahamas, and we should try them here in the Bahamas. We should adjudicate them here in the Bahamas. I am now joining the Bahamas Christian Council in their recent pronouncement for alternative forms of the methods for the death sentence. I believe that we must put legislation in place before the Parliament of the Bahamas for the imposition of lethal injection for the death sentence. So I do join myself with the Christian Council in this regard. If not, the Bahamas Constitution Party will have to write legislation itself. We did it before in 2016 in regards to the mandatory registration of voters, and we will do it again if we have to. We believe it is necessary that we do what we have to make sure that justice is served in our land. As I get ready to close for today, the Constitution sets out rules and laws by which we should govern ourselves. And until we create a new one, we must live by this one. However, I continue along with my colleagues in a bipartisan approach to create meaningful reforms for constitutional changes for the next generation. I do believe that the next generation of Bahamians, whether they live here in the Bahamas or abroad, believes that there must be changes to the Constitution. In fact, I believe they are very much fond of having the creation of a new system of governance within the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I believe that the constitutional changes that has been brought forward before and was defeated was as a result of trust. People do not trust their government. And successive governments have come in a political, a partisan approach to bring constitutional changes, and while they may be merited, people do not trust, have not and did not trust those governments at the time to bring those changes. But I do believe the Bahamas Constitution Party, in its way forward, in the fact that it was created for the purpose of bringing not only constitutional change, but the righteous agenda of righteous mandates for the people and the Commonwealth and the sovereign state called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, that we will do that if we are elected or when we are elected to the governance of the Bahamas. So persons who stand in that regard, looking for constitutional change, looking for the creation of a new system of governance, looking to go towards constitutional democracy, should stand with the Bahamas Constitution Party for that in that regard. If we must rebirth or birth a new nation, then we must do so by the order it has been mandated to do. This call for this honorable and righteous agenda can only take place when all and sundry agrees to the path to take. We cannot be duplicitous. I must repeat myself. We cannot be duplicitous. Either we want change or we do not want change. We cannot be scattered. We cannot have every agenda looking to do the same thing. We will not achieve. In fact, those who are enemies to what we are doing is very happy when we do this kind of thing. We cannot be egotistical and want our own way. Everybody wants to lead and everybody wants to do what they want to do, but everybody cannot lead and everybody do not have the plan on how to accomplish what we must for the creation or the rebirth of the nation. It requires keys. It requires delegated authority, and it requires experience, and sometimes it requires some scars. As we get to the end here, I wish to read a letter coming from Sir Lyndon Pindling and Sir Randall Fox regarding the way forward for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Both men, God rest their soul, mentored me between 1998 and 2000 regarding the rebirth of the old agenda. So a righteous agenda or righteous governance is not a new agenda. It's an old foundation that we must subscribe to if we will awake to what the founders intended, to build a new nation on the founders' original intent. And so what we are doing is more than just going after something new. We're going after the old to make sure that we do what is necessary. If I may read for you this letter that is dated February 24th, 1956, listen to what it says. This time is nigh at hand, where you shall have to decide whether you want progress or stagnation. As candidates, we stand foursquare behind the dreams, the hopes, aspirations of our people, for we realize that only by working together as a team, we can overcome the numerous obstacles that have in the past bound us hands and feet. We are determined to break those chains. The cause for which we strive is the cause of righteous governance. This crusade is too big for any one of us. We cannot win it alone. We are therefore seeking you to join hands with us in order that together we as a people may take our rightful place in our native land. It is our time for a change. Yours sincerely, Randall Fox and Lyndon Pindling. Does that not sound like something we are tackling today when we look at the natural resources in the country and the fact that the majority of the Bahamian people are not partaking from those natural resources, the fact that we are heading towards WTO, we have had the legislation put in place to go towards WTO with amendments to our Immigration Act. Some of these things do scare us, and we know that we now are fighting for the sovereignty of the nation. And so at this time, we ought to consider what it is we are doing and where it is we want to go as a nation. And if we want that to happen, we must make a concerted effort to make that happen. And as I say today, we must unite in this effort. Put aside our differences, put aside our egos, put aside everything that will come in the way from accomplishing the goal of achieving the righteous agenda for the nation. And I dare not leave this first broadcast without reading the preamble of the Constitution, which states the way that the founders intended that we should govern ourselves. I will read it before we end. This is the Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Whereas 481 years ago, the rediscovery of this family of islands, rocks, and keys heralded the rebirth of the New World. And whereas the people of this family of islands recognize that the preservation of their freedom will be guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, and an abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law. Now know ye therefore, we, the inheritors and successors to this family of islands, recognizing the supremacy of God, believing in the fundamental rights and freedom of the individuals, do hereby proclaim in solemn praise the establishment of a free, democratic, sovereign nation founded on spiritual values, in which no man, no woman, or child shall ever be slave or bondsman to anyone, or their labor exploited, or their lives frustrated by deprivation, and do hereby provide by these articles for the indivisible unity and creation under God of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. My fellow Bahamians, it has been my pleasure, and over the next few days leading into independence, I wish to share with you many things that renews your hope and your dream for this, a sovereign, democratic nation. We want a nation. We want a new nation, a new Bahamas that is predicated on a righteous agenda to secure the Bahamas for Bahamians, to bring ownership to every single Bahamian based on what God has given to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And I do thank you for your time, and may God bless and keep safe the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Good evening.